Hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch our presentation. For this project, our group wanted to explore the long-term effects of child abuse, neglect, and maltreatment. So we brought together research along with stories from parents, teachers, and social workers. We will cover what child maltreatment looks like, why it matters, and how different people and communities can work together to help kids heal and thrive. So let's get started. To begin, it's important to understand what child maltreatment actually means and how it can affect kids, both in the moment and the long term. In this slide, we talk about child maltreatment and the forms it can come in, like think physical, sexual, emotional abuse, neglect, and even witnessing violence at home. These will stick around and affect kids for years. We found that these experiences mess with emotions, learning, and even how the brain develops. According to Hershey's and Wilkinson's research, early treatment can literally change the way a child's brain works, which makes things like learning and trusting others a lot harder on. Moving to the next slide. We picked this topic because the effects, as I mentioned, don't just go away when childhood ends. Kids who've gone through maltreatment often struggle with things like depression, PTSD, and finding healthy relationships, sometimes for the rest of their lives. And this isn't just one community's problem. It can happen to any family. It can happen anywhere, regardless of culture, income, or background. So when we learn about it, we can figure out how to build better support system that really works for everyone. Moving on to the next slide. In this slide, we'll take a look at one of the forms of maltreatment, physical abuse. When we talk about physical abuse, we mean things like hitting or hurting a child, anything that uses force. Research shows this doesn't just cause bruises, it can lead to serious issues later in life, like chronic pain, depression, and anxiety. In places where hitting is seen as normal, like as a normal way to discipline a child, violence tends to get passed down through generations. Survivors often struggle with health problems, anger, and trusting people. So stopping this cycle takes education and awareness in the whole community. We're going to move to the next slide now. And in this slide, we're going to talk about another form that can have major long-term effects, which is sexual abuse. Sexual abuse leaves deep and lasting scars. Research shows that kids who go through it are much more likely to deal with PTSD, depression, or even suicidal thoughts as they grow up. Many survivors also have trouble with body image, shame, and close relationships. These issues can stick around for years, showing up as self-harm, eating disorder, or problems with sleep and trust. Sorry. The good news is that things like mindfulness, trauma-informed therapy, and even expressive writing can really help people start to heal and feel better about themselves. In the next slide, we're going to talk about emotional abuse. The emotional abuse is easy to miss because there aren't always clear signs, like with other types of maltreatment. A lot of the time, it actually goes hand in hand with other forms of abuse. Research shows it can lead to depression, anxiety, and big struggles with self-esteem and trust. Survivors might carry guilt and shame for years, even if no one sees it from the outside. The good news is there are ways to help these wounds heal, like trauma-focused therapy and programs that build self-compassion and understanding. It's these approaches that really start to make a difference for kids and adults moving forward. In the next slide, Madonna will talk about neglect, what it looks like, and how it can affect kids as well as when they grow up. Thank you.
As Hyatt was saying, we move on to neglect. Neglect is one of the abuses that can easily slip up under the radar because you don't always see it on the surface. It's when the child isn't getting the basics, like enough food, the right medical care, or just feeling loved or supported. Experts say this kind of missing care can slow down brain growth and learning. The American Academy of Pediatrics reports that neglect can impede brain development and hinder cognitive growth. Sometimes social workers might miss the signs if there's too much on their plates or if there's cultural differences. Over time, neglect can make it really hard for kids in school, and it makes it hard for them to build relationships. And the stress that can build up can lead to bigger problems like substance abuse, chronic stress, and difficulties forming relationships. The next abuse is domestic violence. Domestic violence is when kids are exposed to abuse and neglect, but it does not directly harm them. Even if it's not aimed at them, it can affect kids in a huge way. They might become more aggressive or pull away from others, and that stress sticks around with them for a long time. Studies say that these kids often feel anxious, depressed, or have low self-esteem. And if it keeps happening, it can even hurt their health as adults. Meyer finds that ongoing exposure raises the risk of heart disease and anxiety in adulthood. The cycle repeats itself in the next generation. Now, the good news is when kids get solid support and counseling, it can really help break the cycle and build resilience. Now that we're done with the research, we're going to watch a video and then we're going to move on to the interviews that we did with parents, teachers, and social workers.
Trauma occurs in many forms, ranging from verbal to physical and/or sexual. Whether you've personally experienced abuse or have witnessed it, we want you to know that it's not your fault, nor are you alone. Not only is it hard to talk about, but it follows you even after it's over. We hope wherever you are today that you're in a safer place. Our hearts go out to anyone who's been a victim of childhood abuse. In our description box below, we've included a few hotlines in case you need to contact someone for help. As always, you can also reach out in the comment box. Here are 7 ways childhood trauma follows you into adulthood. 1. You can't seem to remember much of your younger years at all. Do your high school years feel like a blur? You might find yourself drawing a blank when someone brings up a childhood memory, and you can't recall the same one. People with childhood trauma may experience flashbulb memories, in which they remember vivid moments, but not the full event. When you look back on the past, it's made up of more black holes than fully written chapters. You might even feel like someone or something has stolen your childhood, depending on the severity of the events. 2. You find yourself in toxic relationships. If you've ever watched or read The Perks of Being a Wallflower, you'd be familiar with the quote, "We accept the love we think we deserve." When you grow up in a household devoid of love and emotional support, healthy relationships are a foreign concept to you. In fact, many people who face childhood trauma often adopt the fearful avoidant attachment style, where they want emotionally close relationships, but find it hard to trust or depend on others completely. Consequently, without knowing it, you might seek destructive relationships, mistaking the mistreatment and uncertainty for excitement. 3. Or you feel like you don't deserve love at all. People who experienced abuse in their childhoods might avoid romantic relationships altogether, believing they can't be loved by others. This is known as the anxious preoccupied attachment, where the individual wants to establish emotional intimacy with others, but often fears rejection. As a result, vulnerability is usually avoided when they've only been hurt by people they once trusted. This kind of trauma doesn't just ache, it ruins you. 4. You develop passive aggressiveness. Did you grow up in a household with anger all the time? It can be so scarring that you might even grow fearful of this emotion. You learned at a young age that none of your emotional needs were important, so you've only resorted to burying or suppressing them. As you reach adulthood, you'll continue to exercise passive-aggressive behavior because straightforward communication was avoided when you were a child. 5. Negative self-talk is amplified. Childhood trauma gets into victims' heads and makes them believe they won't ever be good enough. It's not something they can just snap out of or fix with positivity. It's scary and real how convincing their parents might have been when their words and actions cut them deep. 6. You ride an emotional roller coaster. You might either feel too much or not enough at all. Trauma can cause a disruption in your emotional well-being. Signs include troublemaking decisions, impulsive behavior, and random outbursts of anger or frustration. 7. You don't know who you are. Identity is difficult, but it seems more impossible to grasp or pin down when you face childhood trauma. It's slippery like a fish, and the more you try to see yourself, the less you begin to recognize who you thought you were. Have you or anyone you know experienced any of these symptoms? Please share your thoughts with us below. We're an open-minded team and we will never judge you for your stories. In fact, we often find them inspiring. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more helpful tips and share this video with others. Thanks so much.
After watching this video, we're going to move on to the slides. The first interview we did was with Mrs. G. She's a school social worker who's passionate about helping kids deal with trauma. She told us about how abuse can really change the way a child's brain reacts to stress, which might show up as acting out or shutting down. Instead of just punishing the kids, she pushes for things like restorative justice and getting families involved in the healing process. A big challenge is that some families, especially the ones from immigrant backgrounds, worry about CPS or feel stigma around seeking help. Mrs. G spends a lot of time building trust and educating families so that everyone can feel safe and supported. The next interview was with Mrs. A. She's also a school social worker. She works with lots of students and families who come from different backgrounds and face extra challenges, like limited resources or language barriers. She focuses on counseling and running small groups to give kids a safe space to talk and heal. Mrs. A also works with community organizations and uses cultural liaisons to help bridge gaps and make sure every family can access the help they need. One thing she pointed out is that tough discipline policies like suspensions or zero tolerance can actually make things worse sometimes, especially for the kids who've already experienced trauma. She believes that instead of just seeing misbehavior, teachers and staff need to always ask themselves, what's really going on here? That way, schools can be more supportive and welcoming. We're going to move on to Dima, where she's going to finish telling us more about the interview.
Ms. Lopez really puts her students' well-being first. She told us that for kids coping with trauma, things like Having a steady routine and a calming voice makes a huge difference. In her classroom, she actually has a special corner where kids can take a break, breathe, and get themselves together if they're really upset or feeling overwhelmed. Her biggest philosophy is that kids need to feel safe before they can focus on learning. It's all about creating a trustworthy space where kids know someone cares and where kindness and consistency are the norm. Mrs. Smith described how she helped a student who had gone through sexual abuse. Her first priority wasn't getting the full story, it was making sure the student felt safe and truly supported. She watched for signs of trauma, like pulling away or feeling down, and always focused on trust and emotional safety. Her way of teaching fits what we learned in the Brain Hero and Resilience videos. Early trauma can affect kids' brains and relationships for years. Sometimes just having a reliable adult who listens and cares can make all the difference. The parent I spoke with shared a powerful story about learning to let go of strict discipline she grew up with back home. When she first became a parent in the US, she felt isolated and sometimes which made it hard to ask for help. Attending parenting classes and joining a support group at her mosque helped her realize that emotional safety, patience, and gentle guidance were much more effective than punishment. She's now focused on building trust with her kids and making sure they feel safe to talk about anything, even as she tries to keep family and faith traditions alive. This shows how culturally sensitive support can really help parents grow and break old cycles for the next generation. Fatima interviewed a father whose daughter went through some really tough cyberbullying, being excluded from group chats and targeted in social media posts. He talked about how hard it was at first to understand what she was going through and how important it became for their family to keep communication open at home. What really stood out was how even the online stuff felt just as painful and isolating as it happened face to face. The father wishes school had stronger, more trauma-informed anti-bullying policies and found parent support groups to be really important. It reminds us that for some families and cultures, digital bullying might still be underestimated, even though it can leave real scars. Um, Starting support early makes a huge difference for kids dealing with trauma. In trauma-informed schools, teachers look at behavior as a form of communication instead of just seeing it as bad. That means they're trained to notice signs of trouble early on and respond with empathy and understanding. The research shows that if schools are proactive and supportive, students can have much better mental health down the road. Simple things like regular check-ins, predictable routines, and caring adults help kids feel safe and more able to focus and grow.
Programs that really focus on supporting families can make a big difference in stopping abuse before it happens. When parents have a chance to learn, connect, and talk about their challenges with others who understand and get it, they're more confident and better able to care for their kids. The research shows that connecting schools, mental health centers, and community groups, especially in ways that match the family's values, builds trust and helps families feel included and understood. Restorative justice is all about focusing on healing instead of just handing out punishments. Richmond found that when schools use things like restorative circles, students feel heard and suspensions go down. It encourages students to own up to their actions, learn from them, and feel like part of their school community again. In the classroom, it helps build empathy and emotional control so kids feel safe enough to grow and change instead of just being afraid of getting in trouble. Therapy can be a major lifeline for kids who've been through trauma, especially if they're not comfortable talking about it. CBT and play therapy helps kids sort out and handle their emotions in a safe way. For situations involving abuse or neglect, trauma-focused CBT is what the research recommends most. it's really shown to help. And it's not just about what's available in school. Social workers can connect kids with outside therapists and services so support can continue no matter where they are. Protective families are the building blocks for kids to recover and thrive after tough experiences. Research by the National Child Traumatic Stress Network points to the power of positive relationships, steady routines, and safe spaces. When schools and families teach their kids how to cope and speak up for themselves, it gives them real tools to handle stress and build trust again. Having mentors and a community to belong to also makes a huge difference. Resilience is built with others, not alone.
Advocacy and change. Change isn't just about new laws. It's just as much about what happens in our communities and neighborhoods. By setting up workshops on child safety and resilience, teaming up with local faith groups, and creating safe spaces where kids and teens have a say, we make room for everyone's voice. Media campaigns can spotlight what healthy parenting and mental health really look like. Cutting down on shame and misunderstandings. Advocacy starts with giving families particular tools and chances to speak up for what they need. Next slide. Advocacy in practice. To stay ahead, prevention efforts have to keep up with new challenges, like cyberbullying, which means teaching parents and kids how to be safer online. Teachers also need real training to spot signs of trauma early so kids can get the help before things get worse. Instead of suspicion and exclusion, restorative practices can help schools solve problems together. And as our community grow more diverse, research needs to make sure everyone's experiences are included, so solutions really work for every child and family. Next slide. For future directions for change, from everything we've learned, research and real stories, it's clear that every child maltreatment impacts every part of kids' life, from how they feel to how they learn and grow. The good news, every support can really help reverse a lot of those effects. Making a real difference means schools, families, and communities teaming up with a focus on empathy, trust, and respecting each family's culture. That's where real healing and prevention begins. Next slide. Reflection and conclusion and key takeaways. Ms. Lopez, the social worker I interviewed, said something that really summed things up. She said, "Sometimes you won't hear a child say what's wrong, but you'll definitely see it. Our job is to pay attention and listen in new ways, not just to words, but to their actions, their silence, even when they seem afraid. Healing can start with the little things, kindness in a classroom, a check-in at home, a patient moment, and a parent who can be there. When we put relationships first, prevention and hope follow anyone. Teachers, parent, neighbor can be the difference for a child who needs someone on their side. Thank you.
Diversity and culture. Culture has a massive effect on how families think about disciplines, parenting, and what counts as an abuse. In one of our interviews, the parent shared that in her home country, physical punishment was seen as just caring for your child until she learned about positive parenting through local classes. The research agrees if service doesn't fit family value, families are less likely to trust or use them. When programs use the right language and truly respect people's beliefs, changes come much easier, and families feel supported, not judged. Getting help isn't always a level playing field. Mr. A told us that a lot of immigrant families are nervous about reaching out, especially if they don't speak the language or worry about getting judged or having CBS show up. Researchers back this up. Neglect and other issues can slip through the cracks when professionals don't understand a family's background. Hiring a bilingual staff, providing materials people understand, and building genuine trust is key if we want families to actually use those resources. Trauma doesn't impact every child in the same way. Kids from different background, whether it's race, culture, language, ability, or economic situation, often face extra hurdles and may not get the support they need. Families who speak multiple languages or come from minority groups sometimes deal with more stigma or find it harder to access services. That's why we need to be flexible, making sure interventions consider all layers that makes up kids and families' lives instead of treating everyone the same. Advocacy is all about pushing for changes that actually matter, starting in your classroom and reaching up to schools, borders, and government. A few big steps. Schools need more mental health professionals and trauma training. Every teacher should be trained to notice and help with trauma, and families need resources that speak their language and fit their culture. Supporting laws that opens up mental health care in school and making sure parents can access education no matter what language they speak are a huge ways to help more kids and families find the support they deserve. Now I would like to welcome Emmett to finish our presentation. Thank you.